it's Shelby and welcome to 2020. It is a new year and I decided that today I would make a video in honor of the new year. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I make videos ranging from beginner zero waste tips all the way up to advanced tips to help you live a more sustainable lifestyle that maybe you haven't heard of before. And I would consider today's video to be sort of intermediate. We're not going to be talking about zero waste swaps, which I have a video on that coming soon, zero waste swaps for 2020. So if you're wanting to hear more about that, stay tuned. But this is going to focus more on habits and tips and skills maybe that you can learn to kind of do better with helping the planet, living a more sustainable lifestyle, if you will. And I wouldn't consider this video to be beginner or advanced. I would consider it to be somewhere in the middle. And we're going to be talking about some things that you can do in your life that mostly are free. A few things are not, but mostly that are. But before we get into, I wanted to give a huge thank you to my sponsor today, which is Skillshare. Since we're going to be talking about some things that maybe require some special skills, I wanted to have them partner up with me on this video. I'll tell you more about some of the courses I've been looking into recently. Last time I talked about a composting course. This time I'm going to be talking about a design course. But Skillshare is an awesome platform with a ton of learning resources, and they're offering my viewers 2 months for free if you use the link in the description. Like I said, we'll talk more about that shortly. But I wanted to give them a huge thank you and then move into the tips for you that you can start implementing into your life if you have not already in 2020. Actually, a couple more quick things before we jump into this. If you guys remember last year, my friend Camilla Chain, she runs the podcast called Green Dreamer, and I was on her podcast. And then last year I talked about the planner that she put out, which I loved and I used all year, and I finally recycled just a few days ago. But this year she made the Green Dreamer planner even better, and so I asked her if we could partner up and do a giveaway, and she said yes. So stay tuned to the end of this video if you're interested in winning a 2020 planner that gives back as well as is made from sustainable materials, and it's by a small woman creator. Not that she's small, but like a small woman-owned company kind of thing. So yeah, just stay tuned for that. And then the other thing I wanted to ask you is, let me know which of these you have or haven't implemented, or maybe just like this many out of this many I have or haven't done, so I can get a feel for where you're at in your journey, which helps me get a feel for what I can do to help you more in the future. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's get started. Okay, so the first thing might seem kind of like a beginner tip, but it's something that even people in my life who are more conscious are not doing, and something that I personally was only able to implement into my life kind of recently. And it's line drying your clothes, or hang drying your clothes, or whatever you want to call it. Not putting them in the dryer and wasting energy. Whatever you want to call that. Obviously, this is a habit that does not cost you anything. It's a tip that doesn't cost you anything. As a matter of fact, it can save you money, not only in the fact that you're not running your dryer, which is a pretty energy intensive appliance, but also everyone says, and I can testify to this as well, when you don't dry your clothes, they last longer. Personally, for me, they start to shrink, or like the fit gets weird, certain things get stretched out, or certain things get brought in from the dryer, and when I'm not drying my clothes, the fit stays the way I bought it and the way I like it. So not using the dryer can save you money in many ways, but also help the environment in many ways by helping your clothes last longer and you lose less energy. My next thing is to implement a schedule or make it a regular thing to make pantry meals. To not go to the grocery store until you've cleared out a certain section of your pantry. I think it's a little unrealistic to say never go to the grocery store unless your pantry is empty, because you need bits and bobs from things that might be left over in your pantry for the meals that you want to make. But I would say make it a habit to go through your pantry and make an effort to base meals on what's already in there versus going to the store and getting something that's a whole new meal. Whether you have stuff in your pantry from impulse buys or things left over from other meals or just things you came about randomly. Whatever the case is, to prevent food from going bad and to prevent food waste by things expiring or you forgetting about them, make it a regular occurrence to look in your pantry before you meal plan or before you go to the grocery store. And also keep your freezer in mind with this, because the same situation happens with your freezer. You buy things, you put it in there, you forget about it. Sometimes you buy another one, sometimes you just forget it's in there and it gets freezer burned before you can use it. So make a conscious effort not to do that. Speaking of food, make it a priority to grow some of your own. No matter how small you start, it's a great thing to get in the habit of trying to at least learn what it takes to grow something on your own. We had a community garden last year. We don't have it anymore because we moved, but we do have a yard, which this year I plan to implement some things to grow some things that I'm really excited about. But we started as small as we recently got a rain barrel, and there was this little, I don't know what you call it, area where you could grow stuff on top of it, and instead of choosing like ornamental plants, we chose plants that were edible. So mint is currently taking over it. I need to transplant my kale because it is being suffocated a little bit, as I expected, but we're growing our own food that we don't have to go to the store for. So obviously that's as eco-friendly as it can get. It's just going to your backyard and picking something. If you don't have a yard, you can grow this literally off of your balcony or on your back porch or whatever it is that you do have. There are also plenty of videos and resources online about growing food indoors and in pots. So just experimenting with what you're able to be able to start growing something so that someday maybe you can move up to having your own full-blown garden. But whatever it is, find a way to start growing some food of your own. Something I am a huge proponent of is secondhand shopping. I always preach buying secondhand first. My brain rarely goes to, where can I buy this new? My brain always goes to, where can I buy this secondhand? How do I search it? What's gonna be the easiest way? Who do I know that might already have this? Who can I borrow it from? My brain is trained in that way now. So a tip for you guys is to train yourself to do the same thing. Even if it's something as simple as a jack for your car, or maybe that's not simple, but Madison is just obsessed with collecting tools at this point. That's her texting me right now. I hope she can't hear me upstairs. She has become so excited about fixing things on the car and fixing things on the house and buying tools to do so, which is fine, but a lot of these tools are things that you only use for one purpose. And in my head, that is pretty silly to go and buy that item new just to use for that one purpose, especially when it's likely that your neighbors or your family or your friends have one that you could borrow. So I guess that kind of got off into the tangent of another tip. So my first tip was to think secondhand first. So if you need to buy a car jack, think where you can buy it secondhand first. But also start getting yourself into the habit of, who can I borrow from? Where can I maybe trade something for this? Anything that's not purchasing from the market new and creating a demand for more resources to be taken from the environment to make that item, this is going to be a much more sustainable option. That's why I'm always preaching secondhand first, borrowing, using apps like Buns, using Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, Let Go, all those sort of resources where you can get things that you might need for your home without participating in the new market. Sorry that kind of became my 2 tips in one, to seek out things to borrow and to trade, and also to buy things secondhand, but they kind of go together. And I don't really write scripts for these videos. I basically just write the tips and then I just ramble on about an experience I had, and the tools are the most recent experience that I had. So that's how that went. Something that's kind of related to trading and swapping or borrowing or buying secondhand is repairing. So being able to fix what you already have instead of having to go and buy a whole nother whatever it is. Currently in my life, it is with the house, like all the things that break in the house, and repairing things that happen here instead of going and buying another one just to replace it. So recently, I always just tell you what's going on in my life that like relates to this topic, but my parents are food hoarders. Like, well, actually my mom is just a hoarder in general. Sorry mom, but you know it's true. But she's also a food hoarder, and it's a problem. So my mom is a food hoarder. She literally has, I think, 6 fridges, or maybe like 6 fridge/freezers. Like some of them are just freezers and some of them are fridges. 2 people live in her household, you guys. 2, my mom, my dad, 2 people. And she has all these things. I tell you this to tell you that one of them went out the other day while I was there. And my mom's initial reaction was, okay, well, let's see if we can buy another one. Which, first of all, she started to look to buy one new, which is crazy to me because they get so expensive so quickly. Like, the first thing my brain ever goes to when I have to buy something expensive is, how do I get this secondhand so I don't have to pay for it new? But she started talking about buying a new one, which, by the way, is also crazy because she could have just tried to get the one she already had repaired. Now, a lot of times repairs end up costing just as much, if not almost as much as what it would cost to replace that item. But in the grand scheme of things, if you're going to be spending that money anyway, why not get what you already have repaired? That way you're not throwing something away and buying a whole new one of those things. A lot of household appliances are set up to fail. It's called planned obsolescence. One of my biggest pet peeves when I think about sustainability is how that is built into our products. But to go and buy something new just means that likely in a few years you're gonna have to turn around and do it all over again. So why not repair what you already have? That's obviously a big example, but this can come down to things like boots. I have a leather pair of boots that I am being very meticulous about getting repaired every every season. That way they don't crap out on me because they're my favorite pair of boots. Keeping up with them means I don't have to buy a new pair. Things like that. Just repairing things instead of purchasing them new. So definitely start looking for ways to implement repair into your lifestyle. This next one's been talked about a lot recently, and I know a lot of people have questions about it, so it is carbon offsets. Now, you can carbon offset your travel. That's the most, like, I guess, popular way that people refer to carbon offsets is when you fly. It's one of the biggest ways that we produce carbon. Like, it's the biggest part of our carbon footprints. I personally am not in a place to give up flying for many reasons, but it's just my personal choice at this current time in my life. I definitely am interested in finding different ways to get around, both in where I am and when I'm traveling longer distances. Like I did a trip this year where I flew to LA, but then took like buses and trains up to Vancouver. So I am willing to do those things, but driving 24 hours to LA or taking 4 days to get to LA via train is not on my to-do list. I can't justify that. So instead, you can offset the carbon that comes out when you fly. And the way that this typically happens is you pay a company who is able to do carbon offsetting. The most popular way this is done is by tree planting. So when you plant trees, they take carbon out of the atmosphere. So you emit carbon when you go into the plane, and then you plant the trees, and the trees take the carbon out of the atmosphere. That is the idea. So personally, I offset my whole carbon footprint through an organization called Go Climate Neutral. So I pay them every month. I think it's like $5 or $6, which offsets all of my carbon emissions. So how my food is transported, how I transport myself around, my electricity, etc. You basically take a survey and they calculate your carbon footprint, and then you're able to pay them to offset it. And they don't just do tree planting. They actually have a lot of great resources on their site, so you can see the projects that their money is going towards and helping offset carbon emissions. And if that is a step that you're ready to take, definitely consider offsetting your carbon emissions. And I'll have links to a lot of things in the description, but specifically the one that I use called Go Climate Neutral. Next one is a hard one for an introvert, which is me. And that is to get involved in your community. So this can be in so many ways. I actually recently met Sustainably Sage. If you guys have seen her on Instagram, she lives here in San Antonio as well. And we've been talking about getting a clothing swap started. And I have a very busy life. She also has a pretty busy life. And so it kind of is hard to coordinate our schedules and then set something up. But it's just an example of how you can get involved in your local community. Things like clothing swaps, things like cleanups, just getting together as a support group to figure out where the resources are, where you live, to help other people find more eco-friendly resources or the best thrift stores or whatever it is. Getting involved in your community can have a huge impact in a lot of different ways. But for example, like if you had a clothing swap and then you met a bunch of people who cared about sustainability in your town, and then you guys wanted to present a form of legislation to change a big thing in your town, like implementing composting or a recycling program or whatever maybe it is, then you have people on your side who care about it, who can help you influence change in your area. So that is actually one of my New Year's resolutions, is to get involved in the community here and to be more active. Like I said, it's just hard when you're busy, but I'm going to make it an effort. That's just another tip that you can implement into your life as well. Look for your local resources, your local groups, and if you don't already have one, start one. These next two rules are ones that I've tried to implement into my life, in and out, off and on, I should say, and it is a 1 in, 1 out policy and a 30-day waiting period. So the 30-day waiting period has proven to be pretty reasonable for me. I usually think of something I want. I have many ways to stop myself from buying it, such as when I talk myself out of lists, wish lists that I can put things on and go back and always think about it. I rarely buy things off of impulse. As a matter of fact, the other day I almost bought something in impulse, and Madison was like, "What are you shouldn't do that. That's an impulse buy." And I was like, oh wow, you're right, and I don't ever do this. So it was very strange for her to see me do it, and she caught me off guard, or she caught me from doing it. Anyway, implementing a 1 in, 1 out policy, specifically with your wardrobe, for me is a big deal, so that every time I bring in something new, something from a thrift store, something from ThredUp, or whatever it is, I should ideally be taking something out of my closet. Now for me, there are a lot of gaps in my wardrobe because I have a very casual wardrobe, and recently I've been filling those gaps with things from ThredUp in Poshmark. But in any other world where I buy a pair of leggings, I should be replacing another pair because I already had enough. Like I said, this isn't always the case, but it is something to keep in mind so that your wardrobe doesn't just keep growing and growing and growing, to always be rethinking your wardrobe when you're adding something to it, to be maybe taking something that isn't being utilized out. And the 30-day waiting period is exactly what it sounds like. When you think you need something or you want something, put it on a list and give yourself 30 days to think about it. And during those 30 days, you can do a few things. You can look for it secondhand, which is obviously always the best thing to do. You can look for it by a sustainable brand. You can read a lot of reviews and see which ones are going to last the longest. Like, quality over quantity is always a huge thing. There's a lot of things you can do between the first day and the 30th day to make sure you're making the most sustainable choice and to make sure that you actually need that thing and it's not just a short-term want, which is helpful to keep a clutter-free home, but also better for the environment because we're not buying new things that have to take resources from the environment to make. Hope you know that. That's what eco-minimalism is. Having the smallest footprint we can on the resources it takes to make the things that we buy. So keep that in mind. Another tip is to write companies that you do like and tell them what you don't like about them. So maybe if there's a company that you really like, berries. I know berries are something really hard to come by without plastic. So maybe take a moment on a Sunday afternoon to write the berry company that's in your store a note and ask them to please think about putting berries in the stores without packaging so that you can buy them in bulk, or maybe ask them if they could try a different type of carton that's maybe like a cardboard carton. Whatever it is, write companies that you like buying what they have but you don't like how it's packaged or maybe how they're formulating something, etc. But actually telling these companies that you like what they do but you don't like this part of what they do and you wish they would change it, and then you would support them more, is a lot lower likely to get them to change than if we just never say anything and completely boycott them. Another example is on Amazon. There's actually a place where you can go and review the packaging you got for a package. And as much as I'd like to sit here and say I never buy from Amazon, I'm not gonna lie to you, I do. And so every single time I receive packaging that I think was just excess or unnecessary, I leave that review and I say, hey, this was not necessary, in hopes that they take that criticism into consideration and change their ways, which they are. Did you guys know that Amazon has pledged to be climate neutral by, I think, 2030? I'm not positive, but I'll put it on the screen. Even they are making strides in response to what their consumers are asking for. So always remember to ask these companies to change their ways, and hopefully we can get them to listen. Well, those are just some ideas that I thought I could help going into the new year that you can start implementing into your life. Maybe add these to your New Year's resolutions, or just keep them in the back of your mind. I also consider these to be intermediate swaps or tips or habits or whatever you call it. And some of these things can actually be made better if you learn a skill for them. So for instance, writing to companies, if you take a class on Skillshare that has to do with communicating more effectively, writing better, that can help you with that skill. If you're looking to grow your own food or start your own compost, Skillshare has classes with that. But I want to take a quick second to tell you about the class I've personally recently been getting a lot of value of, and tell you about the special offer that Skillshare is giving my audience to get 2 months free trial to the entire platform of all these classes from so many different niches and topics. So the course I'm currently taking on Skillshare is called Going Freelance, Building and Branding Your Own Success. And that's because in the new year, one of my biggest goals is to at least get started in public speaking. It's something I used to do in college a lot and I was really passionate about. I've had getting started on public speaking on my to-do list for a very long time. And since it is the new year, I've looked back over my goals and realized that is a new skill that I want to deepen my existing passion with. And also it can spark a lot of creativity if I get started on a new goal. So Skillshare is helping me with all of those things. And there are courses to help me with that as well. But this one is where I'm starting because I have to understand how to present myself to the people who I will be speaking at. So at conferences or schools or whatever it is, trying to understand how to brand myself and make myself look like someone they would want to come and speak at their events. But Skillshare is an online learning community with over 30,000 courses, not just from branding yourself or business, but also you can learn how to do things in your kitchen, how to do things in your garden. Like I said last time, I talked about a course that they have on composting. They have a ton of courses courses over there that almost anyone can benefit from. And right now, all you have to do to get 2 months free is go to the link in the description or skillshare.com/Shelbizleee. And after your free trial, it comes to about $10 a month to maintain your Skillshare membership, where you have access to all of these courses, which is a plethora of knowledge. So I highly encourage you guys to go check them out. Like I said, the link will be in the description. Thank them so much for partnering with me on this video. Thank you so much for being here with me on this channel. I've had a bit of a rough patch, as I talked about recently, but I'm excited to get into the new year. I have a lot of plans, a lot of goals. I hope you do too. And before I forget about it, I almost forgot. I'm giving away 3 planners from Ecosia. So the Green Dreamer planner, you can go check it out. I'll link it in the description as well. All you have to do to enter to win one of these, to be one of the people who win 3, so I'm going to choose 3 winners, and you can choose whatever design from her that you want. All you have to do is leave in the description if you're going to take any of these and implement them into your life during the new year, or if not, if you already do all of them, or if you're not interested in any of them. Tell me about one of your New Year's resolutions or goals for this year as it pertains to sustainability. So just leave that in the comments. I'll pick 3 of you within the next week, and I will probably comment on your comment here, so make sure your notifications are turned on and you're paying attention so that I don't lose track of any of you guys. But again, thank you so much, and remember, until next time, you cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good that you can do. Bye, guys.